cackling along with her. The huddled chickens for the moment forgot the opening in the wall, started cackling in chorus along with the rooster. The little hen crackled back. The man clapped his hands to his ears. "Quiet!" he yelled above the shoulders. "Please, a little quiet. One egg has been laid, and you all act as if she'd laid a crateful." He walked over the nest and the crackling, pacing little hen. "So you laid an egg, and you are proud. Well, I'm proud of you too. But still, it's just only one little brown egg. You didn't lay a dozen, and you didn't lay that light bulb. So, shall we calm down? Anyway, I've got things for you to do. All these high-strung white hens, they want to go down the ramp. They are crazy to go outdoors, but they don't dare. And that rooster's just as scared of the newness and the bigness outside. So shall you and I show them the way down the ramp." He carried the little red hen to the opening, got down on hands and knees, reached out as far as he could, and set her down on one of the cross pieces nailed on top of the ramp to give the chickens a toehold for climbing up and down the slant of the ramp. But the little hen suddenly had difficulty getting on her toes to clutch the thick crosspiece on which he had set her. She flapped her wings and tipped and tittered. "Now, don't you get nervous and jittery and excited like the others," the man at the opening scolded her. He once more placed her squarely on the crosspiece, waited for her to clamp her toes around it, then withdrew his hand. The little hen stood alone on the high ramp. She peered timidly at the ground far below her. Her toehold suddenly shifted. She cocked her head, stared desperately at her toes. She lifted one foot, trying for a better hold, tried to dig her nails into the soft wood of the crosspiece. They wouldn't take hold. Suddenly, with a queer, choked off squeak, she tipped forward and tumbled down the long slant of the ramp. She widely beat her wings to slow her fall, but she fluttered and stumbled and slid all the way down the ramp. She managed to land upright, but she landed in the middle of the mud puddle at the foot of the ramp. She stood, obviously still, peering down at her feet in the mud. At the top of the ramp, the man scrambled up his knees and hurried down the stairs to get the little hen. But now, that little red hen had gone down the ramp in whatever clumsy, frantic manner. The first white hen got courage also to go down the ramp. Behind her, the rooster and the whole flock came streaming, but they went no further than the little hen. They crawled around her in the mud puddle, weary and unsure and nervous. The rooster and all the flock kept their eyes away from the bigness and the brightness around them, stayed in a huddle, stupidly staring at the little hen in their midst. The man came to stand behind the crowed flock. He leaned over the white chickens. "Don't tell me your first step into freedom you got your toes stuck in the mud," he joked with the little red hen. He stooped and reached out to pull her out of the mud, but as he stooped over them, the whole nervous, huddled flock exploded all up around him in a thunder of wings, scattered widely in all directions, scuttled away over the barnyard. The man stared at it in startled surprise. Only the little hen remained in the mud puddle. "Why, all I did I just stooped over them," the amazed man said to the little hen. He stooped once more to pick her up. Something big, black slid under him. The man snatched up the little hen, jerked erect, and grabbed at the big black dog that came creeping, almost swimming through the mud puddle. The dog pushed his head between the man's feet, lay trembling and silent. The man stepped back from the dog. "So, you are what scared them. They saw you coming, but where did you come from so suddenly?" The dog squeezed himself ahead, crawled between the man's feet in the same swimming crawl. The perplexed man looked from the dog to the little red hen he was holding. "Well, what do you want of me?" he started to say to the dog. Suddenly, he jerked his eyes back to the little hen. The little hen had no toes. All her toes were gone. In sorrowful silence, the man looked at the little hen's toeless feet. "I was afraid it would happen. All that ice under a foot of straw," he said at last. "One of those cold nights of winter you froze your toes, didn't you? And now they just came off. But it didn't hurt." He sort of comforted himself. "The little hen, these past weeks they just turned to wood, didn't they? And now they came off in the mud. But you didn't feel a thing, did you? It didn't hurt." The little hen, twisted in the man's arms, looked prettily at his talking lips, tried to nibble them. "No," the man said, "it didn't hurt." At the sound of the man's soft words as he talked to the little red hen, words on words, the dog wriggled between the man's feet, trying to dare to wag his tail, trying to dare to look up at the man. His tail quivered, but he couldn't quite look up. The dog's humble actions made the man aware of him again. "Look at him," he said to the little hen. "He acts as if there isn't a bone in his body or a brain in his head. You'd think he was jelly. But just from hearing me talk to you, he'd put one idea in that brain of his. He figures I'm a pushover and that I'm going to give him a home here." He bent down to the dog. "That's what you thought or hoped for, didn't you? Just because of all my talk. How could you know that I've got this crazy habit of talking to animals? But you can stop hoping. You can't stay here." He turned to the little hen. "No toes, just bare knuckle bones. Now, how are you going to manage?" He stood and thought. "Golly, what a time you picked to come." He told the poor dog. "What a hopelessly poor time. Isn't it just queer, though?" he said half to himself and the little hen. "For him to come just at the exact moment your toes are off and just after you laid your first egg of spring. Why? It was like that too last year when the pack of dogs came. You were laying your first egg then too. You'd stolen away somewhere in a clump of weeds to lay your first egg, and so you escaped the slaughter. The only one of these dogs didn't destroy. One little red hen left from a whole red flock. And now with no toes here, isn't much left of you, is there? He impatiently turned to the dog. And now you came along. Oh, I know you had nothing to do with this. She froze her toes weeks ago. But isn't that queer? You coming along just at that moment. He stood for a while as if going over the odd idea had just jumped into his head. It seemed to make up his mind. Up, he said to the dog. I may be a pushover, but not for dogs. Not after what they did to that red flock. And I'm right now taking you for a long ride to get you as far from here as I can. Come along. He turned away with the little red hen on his arm and strode off the barnyard towards an old car parked in the driveway beside the house. Behind him, the dog obediently got up, dragged himself on weak, hopeless legs after the man. The man got in the car, then first noticed he still held the little hen. Hey, forgot about you in all my fidgeting over the dog. Maybe it's just as well as you come along. With all your toes gone, you are now so different. I don't know what the rest of the flock might do to you. This way, you'll be safe from them while I decide what I have to do with you. He placed the little hen on the seat between his legs, opened the door on the other side of the car, patted the seat. In the timid misery, the big dog crawled up to the seat, floundered up to the seat. In timid misery, the big dog crawled up to the seat, floundered up to the seat, as if there weren't a bone in his body. The man slammed the door shut and started the car. The dog, trying to make himself small and flat on the seat beside the man, almost put his chin on the man's leg. He nervously jerked his head back. The car started down the driveway. The little red hen then jerked her head up, inquisitively looking over the rounding of the man's leg at the dog. The dog lifted his hopeless eyes to the little hen. His eyes stayed fixed on the little hen. So we are going to read chapter 2 tomorrow. Okay.